The terms of reference have been labelled as being for draft only, but in fact they're not draft, so we might need to look at that pen mark there. They're there for our reference. We don't need to adopt them. They're just there as having been already adopted. Lydia.
Mr. Chair, I believe that we need to make an amendment to the terms of reference to include 2 representatives of the Youth Council, both with speaking rights, but 1 vote.
Okay, thank you. So you're going to form that as a motion? I
would like to form that.
Well, actually, that's a situation here is that we need to make a recommendation to go back to council if that's what we want to do. So that's Lydia's raised an issue there. Any thoughts, words on what Lydia's raised?
I agree entirely. I think youth should be heavily involved.
I was just going to say we probably need to be fairly clear about exactly what we're asking the council. So from our discussions, I believe that we were looking at having 2 representatives from the Youth Council, both with speaking rights, but only 1 with voting rights. So if that's what you intend.
That is exactly what I intend.
Okay, well, I guess we have a motion here that we put a motion, not notice of motion to the council meeting. So, Lydia, you happy to move that?
Yes. Yes, I'd like to move that.
Is there a second available from?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lydia. I'll just point out page 4, the membership to be confirmed already sits with the Selwyn Youth Council representatives.
I think, Shane, what we're doing is we're going to increase that to a second person. They'll end up having 2 people at the table with both the speaking rights, but only 1 with a voting right. Are you happy to second that?
Happy motion? To second it.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Shane.
Any conversation around that? All right, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So what that motion is we've just decided that we're going to take it back to council to change our terms of reference. Now, council can come back and say that they don't accept it, but it's our recommendation that they do. But when the full council sits, they'll consider. Because for today's meeting, we obviously only have 1 of you with speaking and voting rights. So we won't formally adopt either one of you on at this point in time because we'll wait until that's resolved by council. Does that sound about right to you, Tim? Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. Let's move on. The next thing on our agenda is so the minutes of the previous meeting. So the minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. Someone would like to move that that's an accurate version of our meeting? Yeah. Thank you, Lydia. Second. Yes. Thank you, Shane. Any conversation? Right, all those for? Against? Carried. Move on to the next one, which is the group managers. Tim, you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this report is just to refresh members on the various scenarios that were considered during the last representation review back in 2021. I'll take the report as read, but perhaps Murray might like to make some comments before we take questions and further discussion.
Thank you for that. I suppose for some of us sitting around the table, it doesn't seem that long ago since we last did a representation review. But it's a very important matter that we work with here. So it's good that we're back re-looking at representation. Selwyn is growing quite dramatically. What we're asked to do was also just to refresh everyone with what we actually did last time. How did that approach really work? What we did, we had a community of interest approach, and we looked at that in the initial stages to say, well, what sort of scenarios would we come up with? How could this actually work and how could it look? And one of those concepts was that rural-urban split. And the idea around the community of interest there was that if you were in a rural area, you're less likely to be interacting in the urban area and vice versa. So it was from do I perceive myself as being in a urban sort of ward, or do I shop in Rolleston versus do I shop somewhere else? Does Lincoln see themselves as part of Rolleston? And with Rolleston growing so quickly, we've got to be quite mindful how we work our way around that. So when we looked at the 15 scenarios that came back originally for the committee to think about, that's what we were looking for. What was the community of interest like? We also had at that point a constraint, and that was 2 councillors per ward. And obviously we had to meet the plus or minus 10% set by the local government commission. So I was looking for how do we come back to change what you had to start to give an opportunity for the members to look at that and say, what can we do? The numbers aren't unlimited. When you have 2 councillors per ward, you do need to actually bring in additional numbers. You need some more urban sitting in some of these rural areas. So we worked our way through with that 15, and then through a series of workshops, we came down to 8, and then we brought that back down to 4. And that 4 came about after some more research that we did as well. We used research first for that, and that was looking really at that concept of how do people perceive themselves in their community. And so it was a perception approach. We also tried to think about it from a functional perspective as well. Where do you work and play concept? But it's quite difficult in the Selwyn area because you've got people that work and probably play actually in Christchurch, but live out here. You've got the same out in West Meltons as well. Traditionally, I understand they were seen as part of Darfield, and they would be looking more towards that way. Now with Rolleston growing so large, it's moved down the other way. So that's what we were looking for, trying to do, was take that community of interest approach, take a reasonable number of scenarios, and then allow the committee to bring that through as more knowledge was gained. And that was the approach that we took through there. And then we got eventually through to pre-engagement and finally the initial proposal.
Thank you. So any questions in relation to Tim's report or Murray's comments? Hold, Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yep, Shane, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much, Murray and Tim, for your report. I guess I'm just reflecting on the past representation that we had and the huge amount of change that's happened since then, and the huge amount of increase in population. So it will be quite interesting moving into engagement. We've used the word apathy before. So how do we decrease that level of apathy with residents, constituents, and council, and how do we engage? What we've seen with a number of surveys that have come through, and we're yet to receive those, and we'll see those shortly tomorrow, is the lack of, I guess, engagement from our Māori, Pacifica and Asian community. Well, that's been highlighted quite a bit through various reports. So I think moving forward, we've got such a diverse community now that have moved in such huge growth. 4.5% in 2 years is enormous, most in the country. So we're going to have to be very mindful of that moving forward, and the diverse communities that have moved in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Murray, something you want to say on that?
What we're looking at doing is actually coming back with a report from staff at the next meeting of August, and what that'll be doing is looking at how do we engage and really getting that detail about. So it's an opportunity for you as a committee to really fine tune that. Obviously, we'll have constraints of budget and those things as well, but and time and other matters that council does do. But it's trying to sort of fine tune that and make sure that we actually are getting to those communities in the best way that we can. Sometimes communities don't always want to engage, no matter what the council may do, but at least we provide the opportunity, and that's what we want to bring that forward to you at that next meeting of August, to give you the opportunity to craft that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ken.
Yeah, I concur with Shane's comments about apathy. It certainly is a problem. We've been establishing a township association in Darfield, and the meetings have been relatively poorly attended. However, in terms of diversity, we actually have a Malaysian who has joined that committee because he is bright, get up and do things. So it's going to be interesting to see how they actually work together.
Thanks. Look, I at the beginning of this meeting, I talked about us being creative, and that's exactly the creativity that we're talking about. What creative things can we do to get around that apathy? And there are Sam contacted me this morning and raised one thing, which is an interesting one, about how we do our consultations for other processes, whether we can dovetail this into that, like for example, the LTP and this. No, I don't know if that's the answer, but that way we get more engagement on this process using other processes. Lydia.
I was just going to give a slight bit of feedback around consultation that I received from West Melton, particularly because it was quite a large change for them being added into the Melbourne ward, and they felt that their views weren't particularly heard, or they didn't have a chance to have a lot of consultation because most of the times that people were available was during work hours, and majority of the people in West Melton are working during the day. So they asked if we could be quite pragmatic around the times that we are around the districts or the communities of interest, gauging their thoughts.
Thank you.
So it's just
Shane.
Just lastly, I guess I just wanted to give praise to the Youth Council and their digital approach to engagement and showing us the I guess it's digital game that you can play that informs people of what council actually does. And I think that's the biggest question. What do we do, and how am I represented as a community member? I think it's important to take into account the level of consultation that's required over the next 2 to 3 years. We've got a number of various long-term plan, representation review, future for Selwyn coming up. So how do we dovetail each into the other, but also build on the engagement process and use that momentum to continue to reduce the level of apathy with the community?
Thank you, Shane. And that's good information from both sides there in terms of just how we go ahead and while we need to make as we're trying to grapple with what our communities of interest look like before the quantitative data comes out and we see what the mesh blocks are. It would be the more we do now, the more thorough we understand our communities, the easier it's going to be for us to manipulate, to do the maths later. Really, that's what it boils down to. Any more questions? Would someone like to move that we accept the report?
So I move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Shane. This is seconder. Ken, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, our next item on the agenda is the representation review report. Oh, it's back to you, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, the purpose of this report is to provide an updated work program at a high level and some updated timelines over the next couple of years for this process. We've got some key dates in there to meet the various statutory milestones which are set out in the report and also in the terms of reference. I'll take the report as read. We've got a number of recommendations there, but I might ask through the chair for Murray again to make some comments on this report.
Thank you. The report basically also lays out what we did last time, mainly as a reference. It's not to say that what we did last time was right, but just what we did meet statutory requirements. So you can see the time frame at the moment is basically to follow that process and meet the time frame set by the Local Government Commission and the Local Electoral Act 2001. What this timeline also does do, though, it provides additional time, which is the time between now and effectively November, for some further or actually initial consultation should you decide to do so. And so it gives it more time to, instead of taking the approach we had last time of understanding communities of interest from a urban rural perspective, it gives the opportunity to actually drill down into that a lot more as well. So this is where this timeline does differ from the previous one through there. Some key dates we do have. We must have an initial proposal no later than 8 September next year, but we cannot put one out before 1 March, and that is set in the legislation. And finally, the Commission must make its final decision by 11 April 2025, should the Commission be involved. The Commission gets involved if there is an objection to the proposal that the Council puts forward. In relation to the report here as well, we found last time we put down some meeting dates and we thought we would have them, but in the end we changed some of those as we went through the process. Sometimes we found things might have been delayed for us, or things might have come a bit early. So I probably note this is really an indicative or draft timeline. It will change, I think, as we do go through the process. But this lays out where we think we should go as part of that process. Also, we note in here around consultation, and one of the recommendations is we also undertake pre-consultation as well. And it just lays out a little bit about, what could we potentially do? But again, as I was saying earlier on, that'll be a staff report will come forward in August to provide a lot of options that we can work towards. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Tim or Murray on the report?
I think, Mr. Chair, that last time there were really only two wards that were significantly affected, and that was Melbourne Ward, West Milton, and Ellesmere and the Aylesbury area. And I know that the consultation with the public, the opportunities were negligible, if any. And that really meant that the decisions were made at community board level without support from the community. So I think it's very important that we should be looking at somehow involving the communities in this. I know for a fact, for example, somebody down Aylesbury Road mentioned to me that they feel removed from their community of interest by being now part of Ellesmere, which is miles away compared to Kirwee, Darfield, West Milton. So I think we've got to be very mindful of those sort of situations occurring and just make sure that we do talk to the public.
Thank you, Ken. Shane.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ken, you're absolutely right, and I think that was part of a large part of the debate in the last review was around communities of interest and how retaining the plus of 10% and also 2 councillors per ward plays into that. So basically, it's adjusting those boundaries to incorporate the plus or minus 10%. The main part of the debate was actually the communities of interest, and like you say, where do we now belong in those Ellesmere ward boundaries? And I think part of this review we will really need to test those communities of interest, and I think the opportunity to perhaps have district councillors should be a part of that as we look towards the amalgamation or future for local government as well. There's a number of potentialities that will evolve over the next couple of terms that may force those communities of interest to be determined. So I think we need to be very mindful of that, but also present the opportunities. Also, I think, Mr. Chair, you did have a view that potentially a roadshow could be a good thing, and the CEO of the time had said that would be a better opportunity for community to engage council rather than the other way around. I think that holds merit, actually, and I think the potential is more part for council to play to get out to the community, as Ken's put. And I think potentially that might be the best way to do it, so that we reach those far-flung corners of the district, because they are so rural. Where do you identify with? So we actually get that feedback from our rural communities and also our different ethnicities within the communities, because they might not feel comfortable. They might not even have the petrol to get in to some of these places. So I think the effort could and should be made potentially for the committee and council to reach out to our public to get those views. I'm also interested in the work that it will go into, and we've heard the views of mana whenua around Māori wards, and I've presented the documents through to the chair, Mr. Chair, and the CEO from before. So I'm quite interested to see, and there's an item there as part of the matters arising that we will look into as well. So part of that engagement will be engaging the major populace of Māori within the region, and therefore doing council's job of engaging Māori that live here in the district.
Thank you. Thanks, Shane. Good points. Lydia.
Yeah, I'd like to support Shane in that. I think it's a really great idea for us to go out to the communities and be more present with them, especially if we are going to be proposing such big changes as district-wide councillors. This is really important that our communities have say and are aware that this could be proposed to them. I always like to portray transparency with our constituents, and I think it's really important that we undertake early engagement with them. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's important.
Thanks. You won't surprise that Murray and I had already had been talking about that, but there's Murray, we were talking about the flavour of the meeting. It's pretty clear. That would be something that is in the April report, so August report rather, when it comes back about the style of the engagement. That'd be something that would be really interested in looking at those town hall style meetings that have been described as being a community meeting, town hall meeting, or roadshow. They could be kind of all the same sort of thing about we go out to the community. Before I come to you, Shane, is there anything from the youth? Molly.
I think, community engagement and really actively outreach is something youth would appreciate, because I know there is a lot of stuff around engaging youth who don't necessarily want to interact, and we're not necessarily in a place a lot of the time where we can sit down and think and go, I'll go to council with this.
Yeah.
So roadshow or community hall meeting style thing, I think would work for youth, I can say.
That raises another good point too. Even in our road shows, we need to be looking at not just geographical communities. We need to be looking at the communities as they're set up before us. Like, for example, we would be looking at doing something at the schools and the colleges and that sort of thing, and in the places where the communities meet. So Shane.
Just to sort of sum that all up, I think it'll be important to, because everything has a cost to it, what is cost efficient and what is within the timeline, the timetable that we're working to. So I just
Murray.
Just a quick comment. What we're basically doing is allowing staff to come back at the next meeting of August, but also then getting your feedback and then coming back to you in September to say, right, we turned up with initial sort of views and thoughts and comments. You've now fed some more thoughts back into that. We understand our budget constraints, and here's what we've now got for you to then to sign off basically in September. That window of opportunity we've got really is sort of that mid-September, the end of October. And we've talked through with Kelvin and his team here, and that fits with the current work they're doing at the moment. So we know we've got this window of opportunity there. It also then aligns nicely with the information we expect to get from the Local Government Commission in October on all our mesh blocks and how that looks. So we're in quite a nice space that way. But I think the key one is that August meeting to actually feed your thoughts back to staff, so that we actually then recraft it to make sure it fits the needs of roadshows, youth, community, and picking up all the various voices out there.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I've just got something very quickly, Ken, before just on what Murray was saying. My question is, August and September are a month / 2 months away. Is there anything that can be done in the meantime, in your opinion, having been through this before, that is going to be meaningful consultation with our community?
It's an interesting one, because I think whatever we do, we've got to do it in a structured way. And the reason for that really is that at the end of the process, we have the Local Government Commission that is there, and they're going to look back and say, what did we do and how did we form our decisions? And so when we think about our first scenarios and work our way through, we've got to have done that on the basis of some research, whether it be roadshows or however we might do it. We can do something sooner, but I suppose my concern would be that it could become a little bit too unstructured, in the sense that we might end up talking to one group 1 week and then want to go back and talk to them again the next week. Will we in fact have just, they say, look, we've already talked to you once, we're not going. That's my sort of thinking. My thinking is more around the structured approach. I appreciate it does take a bit more time to do that, but that's more what would be my thinking. The current approach of a structured one with August and then September, we sign that off. It is up to you as a committee, of course. You can do it different, but I just know that timing does work in with existing work that's occurring within council now.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, my concern is really around getting the youth involved, because it's very important. I mean, at the moment, there's a bit of an us and them sort of situation. And, I don't have a problem with talking to youth, because I had it all through my service career. So I just want to know how we get the youth involved. The community boards conference a couple of years back, it was diabolical because they showed pictures of elderly men who they said this young lady said that is why we have the problems we have today. But these people were in Europe and they'd been through the aftermath of World War II, etc. You know, we have experience. They have ideas. We need to merge the experience and the ideas together, and we don't poo-poo each other. You know, so I just want to know, how do we get the youth involved?
Okay. Thanks for that, Ken. Molly.
I really appreciate you saying you don't have any problems talking to youth, but I think it's also important to acknowledge sometimes youth are intimidated by the idea of talking to you guys. Like it can be a scary thing, and often in a time where community engagement and external thinking is limited, because we do know teenagers are neurologically different and have different social and sort of cultural expectations, that can be hard. So yeah, I don't know, just thought I'd put that in.
That's great insight. Thanks, Molly. Lots to go on there, Murray, for our mid meetings. Okay, Shane.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. I just said one more thing. In the last consultation process, and we've talked about the shifting of those boundaries to accommodate numbers of councillors. The last consultation process, we had what it would look like with less councillors. Often asked, how do we make a council more efficient as councillors? But I hope that is part of the process as well. I'm sure.
I guess actually that was actually where I was going to lead the meeting too, because it's encompassing the same thing now. I think that's maybe something that we should have a conversation about. Is what the thoughts are. Now, just because we have a thought on it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I think that we should maybe open the door to Murray to have a look at more than just the traditional model he had last time of 2 councillors per ward. What's the room's thoughts on that?
Was part of the last street.
I mean, certainly it'd be very good to get an understanding where the committee would like to go with that. Is it still a constraint? And so that would be very important, because that don't change quite dynamically the numbers that we come up with and how we have to work with our scenario. So you could actually put that out as part of your consultation as well. But I know last time it was sort of off the table quite early, if I have that correct. So it'd be good to understand what the committee's thinking now, and you could also test that as part of this engagement.
Thank you. Any more comments on that? Thank you, Murray.
Yeah, I think that if we're going to be proposing such huge changes to the structure of this council, that it definitely needs to be early engagement, and the option should be considered. Nothing should be off the table.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should go to the communities. And again, I'll reiterate that my one concern with it is the loss of our small community and rural voice, is that they will just be lost. So, you know, if we're going to go to a whole district approach for councillors, then it may see the enablement of more community boards, especially for a vast area in Melbourne and Ellesmere.
Yeah,
particularly. Yeah,
that's exactly what we're here for, is to challenge the thinking and to remove ourselves from the bias that we have with the existing position we're in. So that's great conversation. I think, Murray, you're getting that pretty clearly, that we want to blank sheet this. Yeah.
Yes, I am. Thank you. No, that's good. That's good.
I could just make a comment, Mr. Chair. I think the mixed model also could be worth exploring as well, in terms of having both ward and councillors on the whole. That could be the plus or minus 10% is always a difficult equation to meet, and that could cause some problems with the mixed model. But I still think, and I agree, blank slate, and let's look at all options.
Right.
First, I'd like to make a comment just following up on that. We'd looked at that approach last time as well, and we spoke to Napier City Council, who have been a council that actually has moved around a bit. They've gone from wards to, I think they're completely as a a council, not from wards. And I think they got a mixed approach as well at one point. So they've moved around quite a bit over time. So we did speak to them about that. And it was only their experience. I'm not saying so their experience may not relate to here or anywhere else, but their experience had been that when you had a councillor at large, and it was an issue within a ward, they tended to refer the matter to the ward councillor. And so the ward councillors felt they were working quite hard, and the at large felt they weren't actually doing a lot. But that was only their experience around that. But the other point, which I think probably stuck out in our mind a wee bit, was when they felt become elected, they felt the ward system gave an easier way for people to be elected. You didn't need to be known so widely. And also their view was that you didn't need to spend as much money to actually get that exposure that was needed. Whereas if you're at large, you need to be very well known, and you need to put a lot of effort into your election campaign. That was just their one view. It may not be representative of what would occur here or elsewhere, but just a wee bit of background to that when we explored that, that was their comments that they brought forward.
Okay, any more conversation on that report? Great conversation, by the way. Yep. Okay, would someone like to move that we accept there are different recommendations there, aren't there? So the recommendations are outlined there on the first page, that we receive the report, that we approve and amend the draft timeline for the representation review, and that we approve the undertaking preliminary consultation before beginning the formal statutory representation review process. And that's D and C. We asked staff for reports back for their August meeting. I see what we've done yet. For the report, so they're the options for discussion. Someone want to move that? Thanks, Lydia. Someone to second it? Thanks, Ken. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Is that? I think that's actually all we have in the meeting. Okay. It is. So I will finish with the I haven't got the other cut here. Shane, Boona here. Can you finish? Close this off. Oh, there it is. It's on the wall. Shane.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair. Unu here. Te pau. Kia wātea, ai ko wātea. Kia ora.
Thank you, everyone. Good meeting.